1. So, disclaimer, I live in Florida, and as such, as per the governor's rulings, restaurants have remained open for most of the pandemic, mine included. Despite my northern blood Yankee sensibilities, we're also at 100% seating capacity with no required social distancing when this story has been posted. It's been that way for a hot minute. Personally, I'm not too fond of it, especially since my restaurant is smack dab in the middle of retiree country. Still, I am also a college student who pays tuition out of pocket, and if people are willing to risk their health and the health of others for a semi-okay overpriced burger, well, there's not much I can do about that. Cast is me, American hostess at the cuisine restaurant who was just trying to start her closing chores so she could go home. Palmer Beard, the neckbeard of our tale. It doesn't entirely look like the neckbeard type, but it's a neckbeard on the inside that counts. Named after Arnold Palmer's, it will be relevant later. Peaches, the waitress and victim of this tale, named after her overall peachy demeanor. Nice to everyone and rarely has a bad word to say about people. To put it in perspective, she once bought a very expensive spa day kit for a co-worker she had been fighting with, just because it was their birthday. Now prepare yourselves, and let's begin. This all started on a relatively normal night for our restaurant. It was dark out, probably around 7 o'clock, and things had been slowing down. More people were leaving than had been coming in, and as the only hostess on, this typically meant it was a good idea to start the early outs, chores that normally would have to be done by another host before they left. But alas, there was none, so the job fell to me. I had grabbed the key to the paper towels just before they arrived. Stuffing the key back in my pocket, I looked up and got a head count. There were 5 people, technically 4.5 as far as the menu was concerned, that had walked in. The first 2 came in and seemed to be a young gay couple holding hands. The shorter one was fairly pale and lanky with clean-cut hair and a simple outfit. His presumed boyfriend was a few inches taller, on the chubby side with wild dark hair and a beard. Not a neckbeard by any means, but a mid-stage Santa beard, if that makes any sense. His fashion sense was simple, just like the first boy, but with a bit of a nerdier edge. Hey, I don't judge, I'm a nerd myself. They were either around my age, early 20s, or potentially teenagers. It honestly depended on if the bearded one just looked older than his own age, or if the lankier one simply had a baby face like me. I didn't wonder about it too much, though, as neither of them really acknowledged me when I greeted them, only shuffled off to the side to wait for the rest of their party. Following them was a woman in her late 20s to early 30s who was carrying the half, i.e. the toddler, of their party on one hip, and a booster seat on the other side. She seemed exhausted, giving me a quiet, "Hello, table for 5," before taking a break to sit down. She was on the larger side, but frankly I tend not to judge mothers on their weight, because baby weight can be a major insecurity source. I was about to answer her when the neckbeard of our story arrived, Palmer Beard. Like I said in the cast list, he wasn't the typical neckbeard. He was large, yes, in fact, he was the largest of the group and appeared to be the older brother of sorts to the larger boy that first came in. He seemed too young to be the boy's father, but they were very obviously related. He looked like a larger, more bearded version of the young boy that came in, dark, wild hair and a fluffy, dark beard. Fluffy being the important word. Yes, he and the rest of his family, the woman and child was his wife and daughter, were on the larger side, with him larger than most, but there was nothing really outwardly offensive about their appearance or body odor. After all, this was the South, and I recently came to learn after moving down here from the Yankee lands, Ohio, that people here, on average, seemed bigger. I don't know if it's a consistent South versus North thing, or just a characteristic of this particular area. Still, the people, specifically the southern locals, not the northern-born retirees, just were bigger. Even when he talked, he didn't give off any neckbeard vibes. The moment he came in, he greeted me with a warm, "Merry Christmas." Christmas had already passed, but people still made a point to say it, followed by, "Table for 5, please." He was confident, cheery, and charismatic, easily overshadowing the tired mother and introverted couple with his more radiant energy. After about a minute or two, they were sat down, given a server, Peaches, and promptly were forgotten about. As a hostess, I typically didn't interact with customers past greeting them at the door and telling them to have a great day when they left. If I did interact with them, it was usually because we were swamped and the servers had asked me to run food for them or take a drink order or two. Otherwise, I spend most of my time cleaning tables. We have no busboys at my restaurant, so the hosts bus, keeping up with the bathroom and just watching to make sure there aren't unhappy guests that I need to send a server to. This particular night was no different, and, at least from a distance, when I glanced at their table to make sure they weren't unhappy or swiveling their heads to find their server, they seemed pretty happy. The mother was still tired, as she spent a good chunk of her time with the toddler, i.e. going to the bathroom or taking a break outside with her, but everyone seemed to be fairly happy, calm, and just generally pleasant. Oh, how wrong I was. About half an hour after I had sat them down, the night had crawled to a near halt. At this point, there were only a handful of tables, maybe 4 or 5, including the Neckbeard, left in the dining room, and the last table to walk in was, well, the Neckbeards. So I did my usual walk around to find a server and field for the night. Typically, this went with me asking how the night went for the server in terms of tips. If people tipped well, I talked to the managers about cutting people from the floor without much interference. Still, if the tips were bad, I talked to the managers about cutting people who got the most tips, usually the people who came in first, so the people with the least could at least get a chance to get some last-minute stragglers to make the difference. Before the pandemic had really hit, our sister restaurant, about an hour away, had closed down permanently as a result. We had a couple of servers who traveled about an hour to work at our restaurant since no one else was really hiring. Sure, if they stayed later, they might only make a few extra bucks. Servers get paid about $4 something an hour under Florida minimum wage laws instead of the $8.45. But if it could cover gas money and help them keep more of their money, it was worth it. As you might expect, the report I got was not the usual one. Instead of the typical good-bad response, the server I had asked basically said, "I don't know how much that table is going to give in tips, but it's not worth it after what they put Peaches through." My interest was piqued. What do you mean? You should ask her. This, of course, is paraphrasing, but it's not typical for tables to leave my servers speechless, so her reaction remains pretty prominent in my memory. Fortunately for me, Peaches was back in Expo, the places where servers get the drinks and food for their tables, getting some drinks for another table, and was fairly easy to intercept. After asking her what was up with the Neckbeard table, the seemingly pleasant table with a charismatic leader, what she told me is burned in my memory as possibly one of the worst customer stories a server has ever told me. And we once had a table refuse to work with their server because they wanted an American. He was Puerto Rican. So here it goes. After I set the table down, Peaches comes up to them, silverware in hand, ready to make a good impression. She's got a nice smile, a warm aura, and a pep in her step as she goes to greet this new table. "Hi, my name's Peaches and I—" Palmerbeard interrupts.
"If you don't get me 4 pitchers of Arnold Palmer's at this table, I'm going to cause a scene and start screaming in the middle of your restaurant."
I wish I was kidding. I almost didn't believe her. But I had one of the servers who had overheard him corroborate the story. I'm sure many of you are probably thinking, well, obviously, you go up to the manager and talk to them about this troubled customer. And you're right, she did. She left the table, headed to the back office to talk to the manager about it. Unfortunately, the customer is always right. And although we don't serve Arnold Palmer's, much less whole pitchers, he had the bartender mix up 4 pitchers of Arnold Palmer's for this table. The whole table managed to gulp down the 4 pitchers before their food even came out, prompting the server to go get more. Too sweet, okay. She goes and gets a drink made. Not sweet enough. This goes on pretty much throughout the night, with Peaches running back and forth from their table to the bar continuously to get these Arnold Palmers redone to the table's liking. Which, by the way, they drink the ones they don't like. Now Peaches remains as sweet as a peach to the table through all this, trying to be accommodating as possible, while the table keeps demanding more. And by the table, I mean Palmerbeard. The other 3 adults or semi-adults at the table don't really interact much with Peaches, just quietly stand by as Palmerbeard berates Peaches for making
awful Arnold Palmers,
despite him being told that this is coming out of the bar, i.e. from the bartender, and that we don't really have an Arnold Palmer's mix or recipe to go off of. The bartender was just mixing our iced tea with her bar lemonade and hoping for the best. It's important to keep in mind that both the bartender and Peaches have other patrons to worry about throughout all of this. Our bartender is responsible for dealing with the late-night to-go orders, and Peaches does have another table she's supposed to be taking care of. Neither one of them have much opportunity to work with them, though, as Palmerbeard and his table knock back Arnold Palmer's at a worrying pace throughout the night, each time demanding more and more refills of the pitchers. Eventually, though, they leave, and to no one's surprise, this table is an absolute mess. It didn't even seem like they actually ate the food, just spread it around the table in 4, probably as a pastime between knocking back Arnold Palmer's. Normally, I wouldn't judge messy tables when there were children there. Kids are messy little shits, and I try not to judge parents for not controlling their children telepathically. Still, the majority of this mess didn't come from the kid. I don't think they ordered anything for the toddler. They probably just brought their own food for her, which is pretty common. Nonetheless, it was an absolute bitch to have to clean up, and it took a little more than elbow grease to completely wipe the table from the sticky Arnold Palmer residue. God bless the recently enforced gloves I have to wear while cleaning, because I can't imagine having to scrub that with just a warm towel in my bare hands. As for Peaches, well, Palmerbeard had rather charismatically declared that he would be paying for the whole thing, as he had received, or would be receiving, his check from the government, and apparently, you're supposed to be getting more money if you have kids. I wouldn't know as I don't have kids, but I didn't bother questioning it. He gave a less than 10% tip. Mind you, we have handheld machines that prompt the customer to pick an option for the tip. 10%, 15%, 20%, and other. This adult man who threatened to cause a scene over Arnold Palmer's practically bled us dry of sweet tea in a span of 45 minutes to an hour, and has his server running back and forth the whole night, went out of his way to give his server in the middle of a pandemic and economic crisis a less than 10% tip. Personally, I hope this is both my first and last time dealing with a neckbeard, but my love for nerdy things may end up betraying me. So, fuck Palmerbeard. 2. For context, the main story occurs throughout the duration of my college experience. I was around 2 neckbeards who were friends in college. I guess we can call this the caterpillar and the worm. A little about myself. I was a sophomore in college, staying in an apartment a short walking distance from campus. The apartments in the area are co-ed, since they aren't owned by the campus themselves. They're set up for students and on-campus families that would rather not brave the cramped horror of dorms. I had a roommate I trusted in freshman year. He was polite, minded his own business, paid bills on time. So when he had to move out for an emergency return home before next semester, I trusted his recommendation. I was a little panicked, wondering if I would find someone else to half the bill with me in time to renew the contract. My old roommate told me to worry not. He had an old friend of his that he knew needed somewhere to stay on campus. I was informed that this fellow was studying the same area as me, fine art, and that he was just as nice and wasn't a creep. New roomie is Caterpillar. This was my immediate thought upon meeting him before his sign onto the lease, like the chubby, cheeked one from the Bug's Life movie. I mean this in an endearing way nowadays. Caterpillar was more of a pseudo-neckbeard. I was very skeptical of him, nervous even, thinking, oh god, what have I agreed to? He looked the part, really husky guy, tall, had kind of a whack taste in shoes, long, always wet-looking hair, something on his chin struggling to be facial hair. I could tell he was at least a video game fan by the Legend of Zelda shirt stretched over his gut. There was no fedora, though, and no nasty smell, just a pair of old, fogged and scratched glasses perched on his nose, and lots of old, wrinkled band-aids on chunky fingers. I told him my name, and he offered me a really awkward handshake. Despite my skepticism of him, Caterpillar did radiate a sort of laid-back, reserved energy. He kept his hands in his pockets, and I showed him where things were in the apartment. He'd offer me a cool, an occasional okay, or an acknowledging nod as I directed him from the kitchen to living room to my own closed bedroom door, and then where his own room was. In general, he didn't have much to say aside from this, or his thanks for my assistance in allowing him to stay. The move-in was uneventful, but I could see the boxes he brought in from his truck out front, and he was absolutely a video game fan. I love anime and games too, so I further tested his demeanor with questions. I prodded, wanting to know if he was a know-it-all, and of course he was. But again, not in a super neckbeardy way. It was more like the engine that couldn't stop once it got going. Someone who was so quiet just lit up when I told him I recognized some of the Sega or Nintendo memorabilia he was lugging box by box into his room. This dude information dumped like a dump truck at the landfill. He went on and on, his gravelly voice carrying excitedly across the apartment, even though I'd long left him to his own in his new room. I could see how he and my old roommate could have been friends, so I actually relaxed. He was just a nerd, that's all. So after a few days he settled in, just like my old roommate. If I wasn't sitting out in the main living areas, Caterpillar didn't bother me, even if I could tell he really wanted to. He was a closed-door sort of person, just like myself, and was sure of the concept of personal space. Things remained comfortable, of course, until they didn't. The stress of college can do a lot of things to people. I myself suffer the pre- and post-midterm messy room, and that's probably double for an artist. But for Caterpillar, this resulted in some irritating behavior. He didn't stink before, but he stunk up the apartment every now and again with neglecting to shower. The funk was strongest close to his room, but his tendrils slithered through the hall and curled around the corner, attempting to conquer and rule iron-fisted over the entirety of the realm that was our apartment. I am a passive-aggressive. I didn't outright tell him that he stunk, or that he needed to wash his clothes, or that he really needed to do something about the dishes he used in the sink. Waging war, I would leave his dishes by his door, or spray Febreze on the rare occasion the dark threshold to his beard lair was left ajar. I was really angry with him about this back then, because I just cannot stand living in stank. But after the midterms were over and we could have our spring break, he actually did draw up the courage to apologize to me. Hand-scratching behind the head, shuffling nervously, as if he were afraid I was going to yell or curse him out, he said something like, "I have, trouble multitasking sometimes, when there's just too much to do. I think I get depressed or my energy goes away. I won't let it happen again. I'd hate for you to kick me out." Well, I didn't know what to say after that. I just sort of felt bad for him, considering exactly that come next lease renewal, but come on. He had to pull himself together. Hygiene, keeping a living area clean is a very basic bare minimum thing. I tried to understand whatever it was that he was dealing with, and I gave him another chance. I even offered to motivate him to look after himself when he was stressed out. I actually got around to helping him clean non-super personal stuff up in his room for spring break that year, since the onslaught of midterms were over. I cannot begin to explain the magnitude of hot mess that room was, but he and I sort of bonded a little over filling up trash bags. It was mostly a chat about video game stuff, since that's what decorated a majority of his nerd nest. He told me thanks for helping him clean up, since he probably would have been overwhelmed with it on his own, and wondered if I wanted him to help clean up my room after. Now, I'm a little dragon of a lady who very fiercely protects her own hoard. I grew up with a very invasive mother who would snoop through and even throw out some of my things while I was at school. I had, and honestly still have, a system of keeping my door closed. Now that I'm an adult, I like to keep it locked to protect my own memorabilia. A millimeter thick of graphite, just like you sort of keep in a mechanical pencil, will tell you if someone has opened the door, if you place it in a certain area on the hinge. Either it makes a mark on the frame or it snaps, a trick I learned from dealing with my mother. This will make some sense when I come back later. But I declined Caterpillar's offer to help me clean my room. Dragon Lady territory only. So I met and got on good terms with Caterpillar. Now enters the Worm. Worm was someone I had seen in passing. He was friends with Caterpillar since they would play Smash Bros. Or D&D in the upper lunch floor of the university cafeteria hall. He was, without a doubt, a full-fledged, obnoxious, tone-deaf neckbeard. He wasn't as husky as Caterpillar, and not as tall, but they were commonly mistaken for brothers. He didn't wear a fedora, but he was always in a faux leather trench coat that was one size too small. He wore those New Balance shoes with off-white socks, I mean dirty, not the brand, cargo pants, and the same few Pilling Horror t-shirts. I was on good terms with Caterpillar, as I said before, and he never made me feel uncomfortable. So I don't mind being seen around campus with him. The first time I met Worm, I think he assumed that Caterpillar and I were a thing. I could practically feel him scoping me out, sizing me up with misplaced envy, even after Caterpillar had informed him that we were just roommates, and I was looking for something to do with my downtime on campus. I tried to keep my eyes ahead while Caterpillar and his other friends were playing their match and brawl, but he kept trying to get close to me. I remember vividly, just because of the way he smelled, kind of like a wet dog, but human? And fishy, because he always ate sushi from the downstairs cafe, apart from being a weeb, and I know Worm never washed his freaking eel sauce fingers.
So, you're a sophomore. Exchange student, madame?
Yes, I was a sophomore, but not an exchange student. My college was, and still is, international heavy, so I didn't really see what he was getting at the time. But I'm ambiguous facially. I've been mistaken for Asian or Latina before, but I'm actually black.
You like video games?
Anime? I told him I did in fact like video games, but Animal Crossing or Terraria or Kingdom Hearts or Kirby were too casual. Not real video games. He played manly, deep intellectual games like Dark Souls and Alan Wake and Resident Evil and Darkwood, which really are some pretty interesting games. But the way that he insulted my own preference and tried to play himself up just really irritated me. I awkwardly laughed. I didn't want to be rude in front of all of Caterpillar's friends. We all have that one annoying associate, right? Eventually, he nudged the conversation into asking if I had any friends who were into the same stuff as all of them. And then the final shove.
Do you have a boyfriend?
And my stupid-ass, dumbass answer was no, and that I wasn't interested in having one at the time, since I wanted to stay focused on building my art portfolio. Oof. The hunt was on. The Worm had set his sights on the most easily reached, succulent little green leaf on the barren gamer tree. I wish I could have seen it then, in his slimy little smirk. Maybe I could have put my guards up earlier. If Caterpillar wasn't going to make any moves, then he was going to try his hardest to earn my attention, and try really uncomfortably hard he did. It even weirded Caterpillar out a little bit. I assume Worm would probably ask his best buddy old pal if I would be coming to their Smash or D&D meetups, or if I would be coming to study groups, even though Worm and Caterpillar and I were completely different artists. They did game design and I was in painting. He's asking if you're gonna come to the meetup again. He has something for you? I don't know. He'd have his cell phone to his ear, eyes large and exasperated. You know the look people make when they're over it, and trying to see if you can tell how over it they are? Worm did that neckbeard thing where he would buy me really unnecessary gifts. He bought me a plush of Isabel once, and a bell bag full of chocolate coins. That's the one gift I remember the most, because it was hard not to turn it down. I accepted them, I know, and he took that as his free pass to ask for my number. So I don't have to bother Caterpillar anymore when I have stuff for you, Madam Plush. That was the innuendo's nickname he gave me. Now, I know I shouldn't have taken the plush or chocolate, but I really did feel like it would have been rude to not accept this nice stuff from him. If all he was doing was trying to keep contact with me for little things, then I felt like it would have been okay. I was dumb and also very wrong. It was the first check and save point for him. The worm was crawling further along the branch to take a bite out of me. He texted me all the time. I could feel my phone vibrating in my purse in the middle of art history lectures. He texted me late at night things he thought I would find interesting during one of his shopaholic binges. It was annoying, but the texts were normalish at that point. He'd send me photos of plushies or stickers or cute ball-jointed doll pets, since my new Nerdmen friend group knew I hoarded them in my coveted closed-door den. Those were fine to send me. It was whatever. But there was one night that he actually sent me a screenshot of a different website and asked my opinion of some kitty-themed outfit. I'm very sure it was lingerie. This dude was actually asking me in his own weirdo way if I was interested in lingerie being bought for me. I'm not going to lie, it was very cute, but there was no way in hell that I was going to accept this from someone I barely knew who was really, really creeping me out. I told him that. Oh, it's really not for me. You don't have to buy me anything, keep your money for final supplies, dude. He wasn't getting my hint that I didn't want to be enticed with lingerie. He kept sending me different styles, asking if this or that was cute, or if I was a more sophisticated madame that preferred less silly designs. He even told me about things he thought I would look good in. I replied, I'm good with nothing, seriously, this is a little weird. He gave me an, okay, sorry. But that only stopped Worm for a short while. It only gradually escalated from there. Over summer break, he started spending time at Caterpillar's place and subsequently my place, and it almost made me consider moving out. 3. So let us start from the beginning of junior year. Luckily, I didn't have too many classes with Gothic Horsebeard, but one class we had was about 2 hours. We will get into that soon. So how I joined this group of misfits was a complete accident. My high school offered kids a chance to join a program called Career Center. For those who don't know what a Career Center is, it's like a training school for kids still in high school. You get to learn about the field you want to go into, if the CC Career Center offer classes in that field, and you got a certification to jump into your field after high school without having to go to college first. I joined an engineering program, and as juniors, we go to the CC first thing in the morning for 2 classes. You would stand at the bus area waiting for the bus to pick us up, and I just so happened to start talking to these people, and before I knew it, we were just friends. Gothic Horsebeard, Shy Guy, and I were all in the same field. Italy was learning culinary, and she was really good at it. At this time, I didn't know what a neckbeard was, but now watching a lot of Reddit videos on YouTube, I can say he was a neckbeard besides a few common things. He did shower, he never smelled, he never tried to hit on me, thank God. But he was a neckbeard from head to toe. He has a beard that would grow in his neck and never past his chin. He was overweight, absolutely, and if anyone tries to tell him other, he absolutely says, I'm just big-boned. Not joking, he would show his legs and show you that it wasn't fat but muscle. I guess he didn't understand how different bodies store fat in different places. He always wore the same My Little Pony black long-sleeve sweater. I'm not joking, it could be 98 degrees outside. I live in Southern Carolina, the humidity is stupid here in the summer, and our winters don't last long, if we even got a real winter. But he would wear it every single day with black fingerless gloves. He had long hair that was thinning, keeping it in a low ponytail. And when asked why he wouldn't cut it, he would say, because it is my luxurious mane. He thought of himself as a horse furry. I'm not joking, he was obsessed with furries. He always wears black cargo pants with metal chains, the same black and white Van shoes. Thinking about it now, I'm so glad he was gay and had a long-distance relationship with someone, because he could have been much worse otherwise. But I will say for my junior year, everything was fine. We were all friends, getting along, enjoying the rest of our teenage years. The real issues came in senior year, as I was getting over a lot of my issues and I was starting to be better. I will say I did start going to church and was getting into my faith. And I don't think Gothic Horsebeard liked it, not because I was talking about my faith, but because what was funny to me before just wasn't. We were the group of misfits that would say Holocaust jokes and not think twice about it. We always said we hated school and wanted to blow it up with everyone inside. Of course, never did. I went along with it just to be part of the group, of course. That was a dumb thing to do, but it doesn't matter anymore. At first, I didn't notice him acting any different until I realized he wouldn't talk to me like he used to. And one time, I even confronted him about it and asked him, "Why are you being so mean to me?" And he responded, "When did you start being a bitch?" That really hurt coming from someone who was supposed to be my friend. Then I noticed Gothic Horsebeard only wanted to talk to me when I was having a bad day and was acting like my old self. But anytime I actually seemed happy or was trying to improve myself, he didn't want to hear it or be around me. I really noticed when on the bus to CC he wasn't talking to me again, and I soon started not feeling okay, and when we got there, I was in a gloomy and grumpy mood, and he was talking about something dealing with the Hangman game, and said some comeback that made him laugh, and then he was trying to talk to me again. But that comeback I made I didn't like, and it felt wrong. Then I started to really notice his superiority complex. If I said something wrong, he always had to correct me and make me feel stupid. Don't get me wrong, if I'm wrong about something, I'll admit it, and sometimes I'll even say I'm not sure if it's right, so don't quote me. And he always has to butt in and tell me I'm wrong. He purposefully leaves me out of conversations, talks over me like I wasn't already talking to Italy, or Shy Guy. And if Shy Guy, Italy, and I were already talking about something without him, he would always pout, put in his earbuds listening to his gothic music, and pretend we weren't there. I remember one time Italy was talking about going to this Comic-Con with some of her girlfriends, as it was a weekend trip for them, and Gothic Horsebeard was asking if he could hang out with them if he went. Italy told him no, how she was seeing friends she hasn't seen in years. But it caused a fight between them that lasted 2 weeks until the con was over, then they were back to being best friends. Of course, in those 2 weeks, Shy Guy and I were in the middle of hearing about it from GHB, how Italy was being a bitch, not letting him hang out with her at the con, and he thought they were supposed to be friends. Of course, I'm someone who can see both sides of the argument, but I really was on Italy's side. I understand she saw us at school and she wanted time with her old friends. I completely understand her being angry with GHB. I don't know if he went to the con or not. We all just seemed to forget about it. But Italy did show me pictures of her con cosplay. It looked really cool. I've been holding this back for a while, and I just really wanted to get it out. Gothic Horsebeard and Italy are the kind of people to be on Reddit, so Gothic Horsebeard and Italy, if you're reading this or listening to this on YouTube by some random chance, just know even though we had our problems, I still appreciate you two were my friends. Mostly Italy. But Gothic Horsebeard, I hope you are living your best life, dude. 4. At a Silent Hill meet in a dinky little Midwest con, I made quick friends with the other girls who cosplayed the nurses. Most of them were skinny and short, and I am not. They were all so kind, but we were all very shy and mostly talked about our love for the games, trying to pass time while the photographer was getting ready. After getting the nurse set shot, the nurses and pyramid heads, yada yada, all the nurse plus shoots, the girls and I sat down for some cup noodles sitting on the edge of a fountain and chatting away. Small con, there were only 5 of us, so we got to be pretty friendly after nearly 2 hours of photos just with our set. I am a total mama bear when it comes to friends, and considering how sweet these munchkins were, I was ready to glare the hair follicles off the neckbeard we could smell coming our way. He stands before us for a moment. He was one of the non-cosplayers attending the meeting, adorning a 5-finger death punch hoodie with an extremely questionable stain on the pocket, and, assumedly, no deodorant in the 90-some-odd degree heat. As I'm shoving my sweaty makeupless face with cup noodle, he holds up his phone camera. Luckily, he asks before he takes a picture, but Laura, the girl to my left, quickly refuses in a kind fashion, as none of us are masked or ready. And the photographer told everyone to get personal shots while they were still by set.
Yeah, well, Alessa was with the other cosplayers and I only wanted the nurses. You guys ran to the food bar too quick.
I'm not one to sass out the gate, but it was hot and he just disrespected my new cub in front of Mama Bear, so I was not holding back. Too bad, so sad, it's lunchtime, so grab some noodles and wait for the group photo. He huffs and sits down in front of the fountain, pulling out a bottle of orange juice from the Attack of Titan bag he hauled, dropping the snark and trying to make small talk. I stopped eating since my stomach was churning from the heat, and I guess he took that as a sign.
Are you done? Can I have a bite of your ramen since I forgot my wallet back in the lockers?
He placed his hands together and tried to make a puppy face, but it just kind of looked like he was on the verge of tears. I offered him $5 to get a meal of his own, but he waved his hand and said he was too comfy to get back up and didn't want to take a girl's money. Bet you're okay with taking their food, alright, champ? I decided I had much tastier food waiting down the street when the meet was over and handed over my cup noodle with some hesitation. This dolt, at the speed of sound, whipped his orange juice out and poured what he didn't drink into the cup noodle. If he just wanted a bite, he owned the whole cup now. I have my fair share of whack food combos, but all I could spit out was, why?
The flavor combo of beef and subtle citrus brings out the meaty flavor.
No, you put pineapple on pork roast, not orange juice in a cup of sodium noodles. One of the other girls, Annie, audibly gagged, and we started to chortle at her reaction.
Y'all wouldn't get it. You gotta be a real lover of food to get these unique pairings.
He suddenly got defensive and roared, rearing a few other congoers' heads in the process. I quirked a brow and looked down at him as he started to eat the orange beef noodles. He was even more red in the face than before. Laura speaks up again. Apologizing, we laughed. As if battling his own war in his head, he takes a moment and then gets up and walks off embarrassed and mumbling to himself how,
"All girls who cosplay are just bitches."
5. I was 18 and finally came out as a gay man, which is a whole story for itself, and I felt like it was the time to become a happier person, to start dating and seek the luck that everyone else seemed to have. I downloaded a gay dating app, set up a rather cringy profile, and got into the game. For those who are familiar with such gay dating apps, you probably know what I'm talking about. But for a young, gay, straight-out-of-the-closet boy, it's super scary and quite overwhelming, especially when you grow up in rural Germany. So I got a message from this guy, Seely. Out of the many scary profiles, his seemed to be the most normal. He was my age and had some gaming and anime references on his About You section of the profile. His pictures were kind of cute, but his big hazel eyes were the thing that first got my attention. Seely was rather short, 5'5", but that wasn't a problem for me. He had a different hair color in every picture, facial piercings, and a short beard on his neck and chin. All in all, I wasn't put off, and I assume that's a good thing, due to being grossed out and shocked by a lot of people who messaged me. We talked a lot about gaming and anime in the beginning, because that's what I knew he liked, and I'm a little geeky myself. I really enjoyed talking to him, because I finally had someone to talk to. I never experienced any kind of romantic relationship before, so I thought that's it, I'm in love. And I haven't even met him. I know, dumb, but I didn't know any better. We started to do very long phone calls, we talked for hours and hours, and I was so happy for this connection we had. Seely talked a lot about his shitty ex, and about his best friend who betrayed him by staying friends with his ex. I know, big red flag, but I was dumb, young, and desperate. He also told me that he dropped out of school after 8th grade and is working 2 times a week as a mini job, also called €450 jobs, at this very cheap clothing store every German makes jokes about. But I didn't judge him, as I was starting to fall in love. We agreed on a date, and I pushed all my negative thoughts away. In a way, I knew it was rushed and forced, that I didn't want him. I just want happiness. But back in the days, I was good at gaslighting myself, and the date was okay. I really enjoyed it, and at the end he asked to kiss me. I was afraid, but did it anyways. And after that, he said we're in a relationship now. It felt so forced upon me because Seely never asked me if I want this. Don't get me wrong, I wanted a relationship with him. It was just way too fast for me. Maybe that's why I never spoke up, as I gaslighted myself again. He told me that he wanted to see me as often as possible. He lived 2 hours away and he didn't own a car, so it was up to me to drive to his place every single time he wanted to see me. I was working as a mechanic at that time, and I was physically exhausted when I got home, so I wasn't able to drive to his place every day. This was a big issue and the cause of a lot of arguments, which often ended in me driving to his place. One time I fell asleep while driving. Fortunately, I didn't hurt myself or others. This was the point for me to speak up. Celia and I argued a lot, and we finally came to the conclusion to move together, as this would be easier for us. I had problems with my family at the time, so I thought it might also be good for me to move out and start my own life. First, we had to find an apartment, but that was very difficult as Celia was way too picky. He didn't like most of the apartments we visited, and the ones he liked were too expensive for me to pay. Yes, I had to pay the rent as he had quit his job to move to the city I work in. He didn't even look for apartments, but would constantly make me feel bad because it took too long for me to find something. When I asked why he won't help me, he made these weird compliments like, "You're so much better at searching. I trust you with this," etc. At this time, I felt like I had 3 jobs, being a mechanic, working in real estate, and being a clown for a brat. As I was about to end the relationship, I got an offer for a beautiful historic apartment, big rooms, not too expensive, bright with very high ceilings in the middle of the city center. I was so happy for us, I thought everything would be good from now on. I was so naive. I told him he would need a job to help me out, as I was not willing to cover all finances while he's being at home playing video games. He told me that he would look for a job when his current job is done, and he was talking about taking care of our apartment and making it beautiful. I kinda agreed, because we didn't have a lot of furniture at first. Everything we got was gifts and old stuff from our parents, and I wanted a nice home as well. So he would buy furniture, decoration, a TV, etc. I had to pay for everything, as he had no money to begin with. On top of that, he would neither cook or clean, so I had to take care of that as well. He also got me into buying plants, and not just any plants, he wanted the most exquisite and rare plants he could find. Although I told him that I'm bad at taking care of plants, Celia assured me that he would take care of them. But when he forgot to water the €250 bonsai tree, he would accuse me of letting it die. I told him that he should take care of the plants, and he said I was dumb for paying €250 for such a fragile plant. He blamed me and the plant. Classic. He would also spend my money for the newest games and merch, figurines, anime shirts, and so on. That stuff can be very expensive, and soon I was at the limit. As I spent all my savings for our life, I finally got him into the idea of getting a job. He told me again that I'm much better at searching for stuff online, so I had to take care of that as well. I found him a job at a fashion boutique, but he got fired quickly, as there was always money missing when he was there. He told me that his supervisor took the money and accused him, and I believed that. Well, somehow I managed to get him a job as a clerk at a bank, and he enjoyed working there. But more than that, he enjoyed talking about working there. He stuck up his nose very much, and referred to my mechanic job as being second class, even though I made a lot more money than he did and he just started working there. And I know it sounds crazy for a guy with a bad reputation without any degree, even being a school dropout, to work at a bank. And believe me, I'm still surprised, and it's a mystery to me why they took him. For this new job, he needed to get rid of his piercings, and he had to get his hair back in its natural color. This was a big issue for him, but after a lot of complaining and acting like a diva, he finally accepted to do that. His new banking job was in the next big city, and he constantly complained about taking the train to get to work every day. He was so unhappy that he had to wake up 1.5 hours early to get to work, and made this very clear to me by not talking for days, etc. Celia came up with the idea of us moving to the city he works in so it would be easier for him to get to work. I was skeptical, but he convinced me. I have a car, and it wouldn't be so bad to drive to work every day for me. He made these weird compliments again, stuff like, "You're much stronger than I am. You're used to driving a lot. I'm so proud of you that you do this to me. You're such a good person." So, as before, I had to look for a new apartment in a city where good apartments are very hard to find and very expensive. It was just impossible to fulfill his standards, even with both of our salaries. So this was a very long process of him constantly being annoyed with his situation, and being angry with me for not being able to find a suitable apartment. It was just awful. At that time, I got a new co-worker and we got along very well. We became friends soon, but Seely was very jealous and would not allow me to meet him outside of work. It took so much convincing, and in the end, it only worked out because he kind of got along with my co-worker's girlfriend. But not just that, he would also not allow me to meet up with my friends I had beforehand. He was very clear about how I should spend my time, with him, and only with him. And in rare occasions I was allowed to meet up with friends and family. He always wanted to come with me. No one liked him, and I always had to make excuses for his diva behavior. When he found out that my best friend does not like him that much, he tried to force me to block her. I didn't, and we had a big argument again. He was just happy when I do everything the way he wants it. Even his friends sometimes ask me if I'm okay because they knew about his irrational behavior. He must have been looking through my phone because somehow he knew about this. He was so upset with his friends and accused them of being disloyal. I always told them that I am happy with him, because I didn't want Celia to be upset. He distanced himself from his friends and me from my friends, and soon it was just the two of us. After a few months of isolation, I got invited to my grandma's birthday. I was so happy because I missed my family and looked forward to meeting them. My grandma is an open-minded old lady, but back in the days, the whole gay thing was a bit much for her. On top of that, she did not like Seely, that's why she just invited me, without him. He was furious. He said that my family is homophobic, and I am as well if I go to the party. He wanted my sisters, Angelique and Lena, to boycott our grandmother's birthday as a statement. My older sister Lena is queer herself, and has some issues with her family about her sexuality, so she quickly joined us on our little boycott. He also made a lot of mean jokes about her family and me, and my sister felt kinda bad. After that, he disliked my whole family except for Lena. He directed most of his anger towards Angelique, who had to struggle at that time because she hit pregnant while she was at university. Celia loved to point out that her pregnancy is God's way of punishment because she didn't take his side. After a while, I managed to find a suitable apartment in the outskirts of the city he worked in. My mom insisted that he had to pay for the rent this time because she knew that I was financially struggling and that he earns enough money because he loved to talk about his first-class job. They had many arguments, but in the end he agreed on us dividing the rent in half. We moved there, and I hoped that this would make him happy. I realized at that time that I don't want to be a mechanic for the rest of my life, and that I want to go to university to become a teacher. He wasn't happy about that, because he relied on my income to live his best life. It would have been very difficult for us if I stopped working, but it would have worked out if he wouldn't buy all the new consoles and merch. I paid for everything for 2 years now, and I thought maybe he would help me out this time, but no, he didn't allow that. He would even make me feel bad for trying to achieve my dreams because it would ruin his. So I kept on being a mechanic. And being a mechanic comes with going on construction work. Most of the times it was just for a day, but sometimes I had to spend a couple of days abroad to build some machinery. Once I had to go to France for a month. For most of my co-workers, this was sad, because they got separated from their family and loved ones. But for me, this separation felt more like a vacation, even though I had to work most of the time. We had some free days, and I enjoyed spending time with my co-worker friend I mentioned before. For Celia, that month was horrible, as he was all on his own without a personal cook, maid, ATM, clown, and so on. He called every night and wanted to stay on the phone until morning. He was crying every time. One day I was so exhausted I hung up because I wanted to sleep. He was so furious and made up stories about me and my co-worker. He claimed that I cheated on him. Why else would I not want to have Celia on the phone that night? He even got my co-worker's girlfriend into believing it, so when we got home she broke up with him. That rumor even made it to work. Co-workers made fun of us, and we had to speak to the boss about what happened. I felt so miserable, and I was so sorry for him. Celia fucked up his life just because he was friends with me. Celia was so happy when I came back and told me that he needs me, that he can't live without me anymore, and that this month showed him how much he really cares. He admitted that he always had this plan of finding someone who would save him and take care of him. But now I am much more than his savior, I am his man. Yes, he proposed. I never said yes, but I think it didn't matter to him. Christmas came along, and he had very specific ideas about what I should buy for him as a present. Seeley had a lot of things on his list, and every single item was expensive. When he asked me about what I want, I couldn't think about anything. For me, Christmas is about the small things that show you how much you know each other. Surprise gifts and thoughts. So I said he should think of something. First he was okay with that, but after a while he made comments like, "You make it so hard for me by not saying what you want. Why can't I have a normal person as a boyfriend? You know, I want to give you something special, but you never say what you like." And that might be true, as my whole life was circling around him. I wasn't a person anymore. In the end, I bought him a new game in the collector's edition, his favorite perfume, and I made a box with letters, "Why I love him." I thought maybe this box would help him when I'm on construction, and I put a lot of work and love into making it. He liked the first two presents, but he hated the box. He got me yet another video game that he ended up playing more than I did. 2 miserable months later, Angelique got her baby girl, and Celia did not allow me to visit them. He again showed his dislike towards Angelique and her infant. One day after work I visited them, and when I told Celia, he became jealous. He told me that he feels like this baby is more important to me than he is, and that he feels very underappreciated. He compared himself to a newborn baby by saying that he has done way more for me than her, and that he doesn't understand why I love her. I just didn't know what to say. This whole situation felt so surreal to me. I began to realize how unhappy I am and how unhealthy our relationship is. I wanted to give him the chance to change things, but every time I mentioned things I was unhappy about, he called me a brat, that I only care for myself, and that I should break up when I am oh so unhappy. I tried many times to talk to him, but it always ended up like that. He told me that I am nothing without him and that I need him, but I was just so tired. After I reconnected with my old best friend, yes, the one I had abandoned because of him, I regained a little personality. 'Cause at that time I was just an emotionless shell, just the husk of the person I used to be. It felt so good to talk to her about everything, and she gave me the strength to face him once again. He once more told me that I should break up with him when I am so unhappy, but he also mentioned that I am not brave enough to do so. And guess what? I finally ended things after years of humiliation. 6 years after, and I'm a different person now. I am living again, quit my job, started to visit university, and just being happy. I currently talk to a friend who is also friends with him, and she told me that he also quit his job, is unemployed now, moved back to his parents, and waiting for another knight in shiny armor to save him. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Neckbeards in the Wild, number 60. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. No, you're not hallucinating. There was one last week too. I just had the stories and figured what the hell. Why wait? Okay, what is this? Is Sunday, isn't it? Right. I'm not going to make the outro very long in this. I'm going to get the video wrapped up, then I'm going to have a relaxy, lazy Sunday afternoon. Well, I need to clean the bathroom, but after that I'll have a relaxy, lazy Sunday afternoon. Okay, so until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.